Just a moment here. And pop out the chat. And bada bing. Hey everyone. Not even a second. Not even a second. Oh. Okay. Welcome to the show, and for those of you who are watching after the fact on YouTube, don't forget to, any cubic photon magic miniature making machine, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Carlton wants you to subscribe, don't you? Yeah. Anyway, so just to let you know what's going to happen tonight before the audience gets here, I am going to be making wings that will fit on humanoid figures that I do. To be exact, I'm going to be making bird-like wings. Yes. Yeah. Ugh. What are you doing? I can't breathe when you do that, little fuzz bucket. For those who don't have cats but are thinking about it, one suggestion about how to hold a cat: hold them so that they feel like they could just jump down at any moment. That you're not holding them. You're just a shelf. And then they won't want to come down. You just want to snuzzle and snuffle and snuggle, won't you? Yes. See, look, the minute I touch his paw, in comes the claws. He doesn't want to touch me with them. Hello, Matt. Let me put Carlton down. Little fuzzbutt barely gave me 1 second. Go on, little buddy. So, like I was saying before Carlton decided to interrupt, tonight I'm making wings. Feathered wings. The idea being that, for angelic characters, for old school Kenku, who actually still had wings, but not necessarily for things like Aarakocra because their wings come out from their arms. But just, any number of angelic types. And, Carlton, I just put you down. Do you mind? Do you mind? Are you gonna go down, or are you gonna just stay up here and keep licking on my arm? Hmm? He's gonna stay up here, aren't you? Yeah. Now, one thing I did to make the videos a little bit better, I changed the towel that I put on Shinju's bed. Number one, it's easier to see the little baby girl. No. No. And number two, there's not as much light going into my big ol' yawn. Not as much light going into my webcam, so it's a little bit more balanced now. No. Just go sleep. I'll play with you when the show's over. Crazy cat. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to make the base geometry for the wings. I'm going to cut them up, take them into Daz Studio, and rig them. I'm then going to make a high definition morph for the feathers. And even that will be mostly just a base feather shape. Because you want things like, it's one thing if the wings are doing, for posing for this or that. It's another if it's the spread feathered wings of like a hawk or an eagle, or the narrow feathered wings for like an albatross. that sort of thing. The different shape of wings determine how it flies. The broad, flatter ones are more maneuverable, whereas the longer, thinner ones are more long distance, and the shorter, wider ones with a point are more speed. One thing about this, one of the reasons why it's lasted as long as it has, because the rim does not reach all the way up to here. My mouth never touches the plastic. If you're ever going to design anything like this, anything where you're going to put some kind of liquid in, make certain you do that. You have it to where there is plenty of room to where you never touch the plastic. This is not food safe. It's can safe, but not food safe. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with, hey, it worked this time, 3D Studio Max. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a box. Coming from here and going out to about there. Now, as you can see, each wing will be this would actually be very small wings in comparison. Let's make it a little bit bigger. About to there. So that way we can give it an elbow, and it'll fold up, and actually even longer. It needs to be even longer. So let's make it straight up height of 50. Okay. Editable poly. And then I'm going to select that central, the polygon that's right in the middle, and erase it. The reason being is that's where it's going to connect to its mirror image. Now we need to add in some cuts. The first one is going to be one halfway down, and let's go ahead and move it because we want it to end up being nearly as tall when wings. Okay. Yeah. Let's move it to here. And this means that yes, we are going to make it even longer in order for it to actually have a decent. Okay, now we're going to go ahead, we're going to connect again. We're going to bring this one inside to where it meets the shoulder blade. That's where it's going to flap from. And then one more in the middle, that's our elbow. Now, as remarkable as that is, we also need to go ahead and we're going to select here and deselect just only at the center, and we're going to make it thicker, about to there. Then we're going to select the bottom polygons, all of them, and we're going to extrude. That'll be good. Let's actually bring it up a little. Okay, then we're going to take over here, select that one that we just made at this side, and delete. Then we're going to select the vertexes, bring them up, and bring this one up way high. Okay, now we're going to bring this up a little bit, and this up a bit. Now, that looks positively like a positively huge wingspan. The problem is that's actually about what we need, so that when he folds his wings, they'll be like that. Now, we're going to mirror it. Copy. Select, attach there, and then we're going to select this and weld. Now, We're going to select these three and these three and hit loop. What that does, that's where our actual joints are going to be. So we're going to chamfer. Okay. And then, just to give it some space, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to connect it. Actually, we're going to connect it, but we're going to connect it with 3. And then we're going to select these bottom ones. We're going to pull them down a bit so that we end up with a bit more of a curve to the wing. And select this one, or these two rather, and pull them up just a little bit more. So the overall wingspan, assuming that our boy here at 3.5 squares is 6 foot tall, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, almost 11. So we're talking about pretty close to 20-foot wingspan. That may sound like it's too much, but it's really not. Now we're going to mesh smooth it. 1, 2. And I'm actually going to change one thing. I'm going to select here. Actually, I'm going to select all of these. Delete. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this guy, bring it up, and pivot it down just a little. Now, loop, move it, loop, rotate, and move it. The reason for this is to give the joint more of a actual joint look to it. Be easier to pose when it's in a partially bent pose. And then loop, twist, up, and then loop, and then over here. And also, we're going to take these and move them over entirely. And these over a little. Okay. So we have our default pose for the wings. Attach the other side and weld. Then we're going to mesh smooth it a few times. Actually, just once. That's all we need. We're also going to hide the human form that we only really needed for scale. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the center edges of each of the bend zones that we made, as well as the outer edge of that bend zone. And we're going to hit loop. Actually, let's go ahead and also do it halfway down the wing. Loop. We're going to split. Okay. Now we're going to change the name to simply chest. I'm going to take that and we're going to detach as our wingtip. And then this one, let me make sure we got that. Okay. Detach as L wingtip. Detach as L wing finger. Oh wait, no. Oops. That's the R wing finger. Notice that we're using a lowercase for the first letter. That's to make it easier to spot L and R. Okay, now this, detach L wing finger. Select this one, detach R wing forearm. This one, detach L wing forearm. This one, detach R wing SHLDR. Using abbreviation there because when the names get pretty much too long, it gets harder to see in some of the views, and it's become a standardized naming convention for the program I'm using. L wing SHLDR. Okay, so now we have our wing. File, export selected, wavefront OBJ, and we're going to put this into, I'm going to put under props wings. I'm making plural here because I will probably eventually make draconian type wings. So this will simply be feathered mini wings. And because of how I'm doing it, they could eventually be used for almost anything else. Now this is a very basic shape. There will be morphs to make it thicker, thinner, pointed, broad. Once again, we're taking full advantage of the blend shapes that DAZ Studio can produce. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and delete it. I'm going to open up a small little app. This is what I'm about to do can be done in almost any other app, but it's just easier for me to do it here. Okay, we're going to under props, wings, feathered mini wings, 640 facets. Notice there's no UVs. Tools, vertices, weld. And we're going to save. Don't export normals. Okay, that's all good. Set. Yes. Okay, I hate that little bloom. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now we're going to skip ahead. We don't need him in there. File. Alright, no, I'll figure setup. Add geometry. And we're going to go to the location that I have my current 3D printing setup, which is kind of backed in there. Feathered mini wings, accept. Drag over to where it says geometry. And pull this over. In fact, a little bit more. That's as far as we'll go. Okay, so now we want to take the right wingtip, parent it to the right wing finger to the right wing forearm to the right wing shoulder. Minimize it just for right now. Left wingtip to finger, left finger to forearm, left forearm to shoulder. Minimize it. Now we're going to have the right wing parented and then the left wing parented. Now, all of these will have the same rotation. Twist on the X. Side to side on the Y. No, they won't. Only this will. Side to side on the Y. Bend on the side to side on the Z. Bend on the Y. The others will have twist, side to side, bend. Okay. twist, side to side bend. The only ones we need to change are the shoulders. The XZY. And actually this is going to be twist will be Y, side to side bend. There we go. Okay, and create. Bing! We have our wings. Now we need to go to the front view. I must be in the front view, and you probably don't recognize that reference. And we're going to use the bone wireframe. Scene. Left wing tip. Okay, we're going to move the tip to here. Now the thing is, we're going to put the bones along this line here. We don't have to worry about the Z position because it was a parallel object. There's no major change. Once again, we move the end point to where the tip of the other one is, and we're going to move this up to here. Align node. Move the there, and move this down to here. Align node. Now this one will be a little trickier because we're actually going to make it a little bit deeper and a little bit higher. Align node. Now let's go ahead and edit mirror joints. Selected opposite, accept. Edit mirror joints, selected opposite. As you can see, the bones have changed on the tip of the wing, but the base are still. So, edit mirror joints, selected opposite. And we just had that change. Edit mirror joints. And then watch this one right here. Bing. Okay. Now we actually don't need, we need to come over here to tool settings, because what we're going to do now is our weight mapping. We're going to start off at the chest. And what we're going to do is we're going to weight editing, fill by bone selection groups. Okay, now, as you can see, that's not a lot. If I bent the right wing shoulder right now, let's say, you'll see that it's a very sharp bend that, oh heck, I knew I forgot something. Nabbit. I'm an idiot. I forgot to weld the vertexes. No, Shinju, go on. No, baby girl. Alright, so let's delete this. And I'm actually going to have to restart that studio. And I've got to restart that little app I intended to use to weld the vertexes. I just forgot. File. Okay. Tools, vertices, weld. What is causing that little sound? Let me turn the volume off. I'll worry about it later. So apparently I've got them welded here. Don't worry about that. Figure setup, add geometry, feather mini wings, accept. And then just do what I did before with the setting the bits up. And put that in there. Okay, and then the shoulders are XCY, XCY, YZX. Create. Frame. Let's go back to texture shaded, and from the front view, let's select there and there. Alright, let's rearrange these bones once again. Right. Align node, edit mirror joints. And mirror joints, okay. Okay, now once again, we go to chest, tool settings, and weight maps. X rotation, just so we can see it. Perspective view. Weight editing, filled by bone selection groups. Okay. Now, we have a problem here. Okay. Okay, that's odd. Weight editing, fill by bone selection groups. Oh, silly me. Silly, silly me. I screwed up. Figure setup. Uh, left wing shoulder to the chest. Create. Let's go ahead and just take care of this while we're here. Weight editing, filled by bone selection groups. Okay. Now, one thing you can see. Let me show you something here that's going to happen. When I side to side it, which is by this Y, this is bending. This is separating. So, this is screwed. Once again, I'm going to have to restart, but first, I'm going to have to go back into here. File, import, props, wings, feathered mini wings. Now let's see which edges separated on us. Yep, at the shoulders. I have to click that, weld. Yep, weld. It goes from 46 to 24. Now, this means I've got to pretty much redo that whole past 10 or 15 minutes. Is anyone actually watching? Apparently not. Nobody's watching except for Mark. So, yay. Winging it, making wings apparently isn't a very interesting thing to do. And loop, and split. Okay, we're going to call this chest. And then once again, detach our wing tip, our wing finger, our wing forearm, detach our wing shoulder, detach L wing tip. Detach L wing finger. Excuse me. Detach L wing forearm. Detach L wing shoulder. Alright, now just to double check, we're going to make sure I spelled everything correctly. Wingtip, wingtip, finger, finger. Okay. Select them all, file, export selected, save it back on top of itself because this is just a short little thingy. Done, click. Open, okay. Tools, vertices, weld, 96 removed, save, okay, save. Yes. And then we start up that studio again. And while it's starting, get a new soda. It's like loading in a grenade to a grenade launcher. And I have to redo that thing. Okay. Add geometry, feathered wings, accept. Pull into geometry, yay! One tip. And ZYX. Create. Okay. Now, once again, on the front view, we're going to select the shoulder and that. But this time, we're also going to double check on the maps before we do anything. Tool settings, X, weight editing, filled by bone selection groups. Now, the reason I did this is, I don't know if you remember, but when I did this last time, this edge here was sharp. It didn't blur in like they do now, which means it's looking like we have our joints properly welded. Let's try the other side. Okay. Our wing finger. Okay, good. We don't have to worry about it now. Back to the front view and to our bones. Okay, now we've got to move these bones into place. Align node. Actually, we're going to pull this down a little because we want this to naturally bend. So we want it to already be slightly bent. Edit mirror joints, okay. Bring this up to here. Now if you see there is a slight angle between these two bones, which means if something pushes in, it's going to break out. It's going to bend instead of going sideways or going up. And in older programs, one of the things we would have to do is set up our what's called inverse kinematic chains. This program automatically does that. Now, what inverse kinematics is, well, kinematics is the study of motion. Inverse kinematics is the study of how, basically, edit mirror joints, accept, and then we're going to pull this up to there, and we're going to pull that up to about center. So it's been pivoting from the center. Okay, frame out. And we can now go to texture shaded and perspective view. Now what inverse kinematics is when I move my shoulder and forearm in this way, my fist goes out. Inverse kinesmatics is when something grabs my hand and moves it in, it forces my arm and shoulder to do this. Pull it out, around, twist by moving the opposite end. It's very often used in animation. I mean, I pick up a dagger. I know that I need the dagger to be at that location. So rather than sit here, tweak, 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 I can just grab the hand and drag it over to where I need it, and the rest of the arm and shoulder, and possibly even chest, will follow. Yes, this is a dull, cheapo, replica fancy dagger that's pseudo-Norse. No, it has no symbolic meaning whatsoever to me. It's a cheapo dagger that I got because it was cool and it fit a costume I had back when you could still use metal weapons at cosplay. Alright, now, what we're going to do, we're going back to our... Now, I'm going to make sure that we have at least a few distance of the bend, as odd as that sounds. So, weight editing, first of all, geometry selection, select all. Weight editing, smooth selected, we want to do it 3 times. 100% smooth factor, accept. Now, we're going to do it for Y. Weight editing, smooth selected. And Z, weight editing, smooth selected. And then scale weights. Or scale weights, smooth selected, accept. Clear selection. Now the reason I did the scaling, well, let me show you what happens when I select all of them, except for the chest. Go to parameters all, and I do a Y scale. Oops, I forgot that one. Basically, I get thicker wings by Y scaling, and it blends down here where it meets the chest, which is still at 100%. I then do the opposite, and I bring it down really thin. You can see that instead of having a sharp divisor, it's got a smooth blend between them. Now, most of what we're going to need to worry about is our Z bend, in this case side to side. But you'll notice that it doesn't do too badly. Now, just to show you what I mean by what it would look like, let's bend. Now I select them and symmetry right to left, and let's load in a human figure. You'll see that bent, they're still a little large, which we can probably solve by simply shrinking the R wing shoulders on the X scale. And that's pretty much how we normally see characters like Angel from the X-Men. If we then go ahead and select all these and turn our bend to 0 again, and you can see that it's still a pretty wide wingspan. Let's go ahead and edit figure zero figure pose. There we go. And that is the basic shape that we would be sculpting wings on. I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to edit, figure, geometry, convert to sub D, subdivision. And then I'm going to edit, figure, geometry, add a push modifier. The push modifier is effectively the exact same thing as inflate in ZBrush. It pushes the geometry in the direction of that face is pointing, or that vertex is pointing. You know, think of it as the fingers of your hand for the vertexes on a curve. The angle for this knuckle would be about like that, so this knuckle would move this direction. This knuckle would move that direction. Tip of the hand would move that one. This knuckle would move this way. And you'd have the same curve, but it's inflated like a balloon. Now our default push is going to be 0. And in the same way, our default mesh resolution is going to be 1. Now when we go to our wire texture shaded, you can see that's the default, and then subdivide by 1 and each square becomes 4. Do it again and each square becomes 16. Do it one more time and each square now becomes 64 polygons. But we don't need that. We only need one level, because we'll be doing most of our sculpting, and we only need this for posing at this time. I am going to do one thing. I'm going to save it. Let's go back to texture shaded, content library. I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to save these wings as file, save as support asset, figure prop assets, and I've got to save it into for a people miniature based geo. Oh, snackies, I forgot. Hold on just a second. I forgot I got to make some changes in here after having meh. Okay, hey Largash. Alright. That's what I wanted. Okay. Now, yeah, technically these wings are going to be able to be put on any figure. Not just a human figure. But these are also just raw geometry wings. The actual sculpting on the figure will determine what kind of wings they end up being. But there's one thing I have to do real quick, so which is why I'm here. Changing default directories 3 studio. Okay. Tools, no. Edit, preferences, content. No. General. is in D. I do not want it in my. I do not want my temp files on my SSD drive. Okay. Apply. Okay. Save as. Support asset, figure prop assets. Okay. Now, my library, people, nature base geo. And we'll call this Z bird like wing base. Now this is like this, this is pretty much like calendar product name miniatures accept. Yeah, this is like our clothing. It's the clothing bits that we do. It is just a rough shape that we will base. If I wanted this character to have, let's say, really, really thick wings, let's go ahead. Or tool settings, no, content, parameters, there we go. All. My scale, make it thicker. And we're going to have them be mostly folded. And then bend it back, and we're also going to bend it like that just so that we have a shape like that on the inside. Then we're going to take them all, and then we're going to symmetry right to left. Okay. Now we're going to actually change the wing forearms to be longer by X scaling them. And we have our little, and the shoulders to be shorter by X scaling them. And we have our little wing pack for our dude. Let's make the wing tips a little bit longer, just so that they nearly reach the ground. And then we can pose from there. And then let's say we decided to go ahead and make it a bit thicker, a bit fluffier. And we use the push modifier. And there we have our wings. That's all we got to do. And then we would sculpt the feathers into them in ZBrush when it comes time to bring it into ZBrush. I would say pigs. I would say pigs would probably have either little ear wings, flippy, 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 and they're kind of just hanging from them, or or they'd have tiny little wings on the top of that little arch of their back. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pop back to here. No. Wait a minute. I didn't show it. Dag nabbit, I forgot to change back. Here's an example of the wings all curled up on the back of the character. We could also take that and then, like, move it forward just a bit so it's actually coming out of the chest, and move it down just a little bit so that it's like right between the shoulder blades, or right below the shoulder blades. We could then take the wing tips and shorten them a little bit, since they're now long enough to reach the ground without doing that. Okay, but yeah, here's an example of the wings fattened and folded up. We could then, just turn off the inflation. And what would happen if we took all of the X scales and changed them to 100? And then all of the Y scales to 100. Yep. And then we're going to take all of them except the shoulder and reduce their bends to 0. The shoulders we're going to do only the bends to 0, or the Z. And we have, you know, that shows just how big the wingspan can get for something like a human. And that's actually too small of a wingspan for a real human, even if we did that. Even if we made those wings really super broad, that might be enough there for full flight on a human. Oh God, Mark, no! A big old ugly orc in a diaper. Oi, what's wrong with that bow? It won't shoot nothing. Will it do? But that sure ain't death. I sure as hell didn't kill him. In fact, I think he's pretty happy right now. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. And here's a Carlton. Do you mind? Carlton, do you mind? Okay. Anyway, down you go, little buddy. That was something I've been thinking about that I really needed to do that I hadn't done yet. And so I decided, what the heck, why don't I just go ahead and do it? So I now has my orc. I now has wings from my buddies. Excuse me, I had a burp. Anyway, I didn't open the can when I went and reloaded it. The main reason I made those wings is one of the things I was considering doing in the future was getting back to work on my war game. You see, right now the big thing is skirmish level games, like like War Machines or whatever, where you've got between 6 and 15 or 20 figures on your warband. And see, one of my favorite games of all time was 40K Epic, coupled with War Master, which was the same thing for Warhammer Fantasy. So I figured, why not set up a war game like that in my own little warped alternate future magical sci-fi hell versus heaven versus humans versus things that should not be. And somewhere up in here, I've got a couple. Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, perfect. As an example, one of my earlier designs, I'm definitely going to have to pull into focus on this. This was printed on the um, CR10, so it's not necessarily. Do you mind? Oh, hell. It won't do it. This is a stand of troops. This was just a proof of concept. Possibly. But this represents a fire team of human soldiers. And the idea being that a unit of these guys would be between 4 and 10 fire teams. And you would have, you know, multiple fire teams up to and including, what's that? Oh, no. Uh, yeah, no. You know, no, that's not it. I'm trying to find some, yeah, like military vehicles like this, an anti-aircraft tank. You'd have a unit of anti-aircraft machines for firing at targets that have flight. Things like that. And it's a world, in a world where humans are fighting angels, demons, and things that should not be. One man finds a way to turn it into a game. Yeah, I know. Uh-oh. What is wrong? Okay. Okay. There's a problem with my focus, apparently. Oh well. Oh, I've got the game, the actual rules written up. The only thing I don't have yet is the army list. Well, I've got the army list troop type list, but I need to completely go back in and rewrite all of the actual numbers and the stats because in the time it took me to write the stats for the basic infantry stand for human forces, and the time that I finished the information for the unique character models for the things that should not be, I gave myself power creep. Mm-hmm. The original intent was that humans' big thing is that everything shoots. Everything of theirs shoots. Angels' big thing was that they can heal each other. Demons' big thing, or Devil's big thing, was that they had lots of cheap, easily disposable troops and a few very powerful elites. And the things that should not be had weird rules. Oh, she will. Well, she's washed out, but not because of focus, but because of light. This third of the screen is very white. This third of the screen is not, and this third of the screen is part dark, part light. So this little webcam can't figure out what the heck to do. She's also pure white except for bits here, her tail, and a heart-shaped spot right here. Yeah, baby. Baby girl. Now remember, when this was a white towel, it was like this blinding light to my right. This sacred kitty. Yay. I'm sorely tempted next time I have a decent paycheck to just replace this webcam. This is a kind of an old webcam, about 5 years old, and it was middle of the road back then. It's definitely not broadcast quality. Anyway, so I'm going to ask you guys a question. On Sundays, if I can't get new patrons to schedule their sculpts, do you want me to do a painting show? I did one a couple months ago, but it would basically be me grabbing a figure like this figure of Jack and the Giant's head, and using my phone over here, focusing on me down painting down here. Yeah. Jack the Giant Slayer got me. Oh. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I did tend to keep my I've got a couple that I've had sitting waiting to be painted, like my Elite Dwarf. The two sword trainer I've decided not to paint because one big flaw I noticed about him recently is his foot is going into the base so far that he's missing his toe. It's not one that I really want to paint up to represent my skills because it doesn't, and it's old, and it's one of my first with this geometry. Whereas am still proud of this dwarf, as fragile as the dagger can be. I'm not talking this Sunday. I'm talking any and all future Sundays. Oh, oh man, I know what that's from. So I just noticed that I've got some crud under my fingernails. I'm talking all future Sundays, not just this one. But I mean, it's very right now. What I have left to sculpt for the orcs, just as an example, I still have about 7 more sets of legs to sculpt. I've got to finish the pauldrons. Right now, I've got basic shapes for the pauldrons. Um, that's definitely not true. There's at least one miniature painter that I follow that is very explicitly going over prints that he got from uh, Hero Forge, and he's going through how to paint, how to paint the problem colors of black and white, how to do armor, how to do general colors and flesh. He's doing the full thing specifically on Hero Forge prints. He got in the plastic, not the metal or anything like that. Now, the advantage of a 3D print is you can do things that would tear apart a mold. Case in point, I just showed him off because and mentioned how I'm not very happy with him. This guy, the way he is set up, you could not make a mold of him without tearing a rubber mold apart right here. You'd have to make the individual arms separate. You'd have to cut them. You couldn't just do this in one piece. But a 3D printer, done. Um, this guy could be done as a mold, but the way the mold lines would go, the dagger would end up being connected to the leg all the way down. What you got to remember is that you can only have a small amount of what are called undercuts. And the reason why most Games Workshop plastic models nowadays have so many pieces is that with steel molds are needed for plastic, for mass production of plastic, and you can't have any undercuts with them. everything has to be like that. You can't have something that does that. If you had something shaped like that, then you change the mold line to be this way. Whereas if you had something like this, you'd have to almost make them separate pieces or sacrifice some of the fidelity. Old school pewter miniatures were made with rubber molds, vulcanized rubber, and on the one hand, that would kind of compress a little, so the miniatures would be a little bit flatter. But you could do undercuts. You could go a little bit underneath the chin, a little bit, for a heavy beard, a little bit behind a dagger on the hip, but not a lot. You could also trace an unusual shape to the edge of the mold. That's how we used to do it back in my day. Yep. So there you go. hmm I saw some statistics today that really, really disturbed me. The January to December that were my junior end and beginning of senior year in high school, 1986, the suicide rate per 100,000 people was roughly 16. 30 years later, 2016, same no, 1986, suicide rate for people 45 to 65 was uh, was uh, was 16. 30 years later, same age group, 2016, my age group, it was 30 per 100,000. It had almost doubled. And yet, in that time period, we've had acknowledgement of biological causes of clinical depression and anxiety. We've had a greater awareness and stress on get help if you need help. It's an age group that, for the most part, is too old to be the group that's affected by Desert Storm, so PTSD, or not just affect the current Gulf War. So it's not part of the veterans with the highest suicide rate. It's just in general, suicide rates across the board have skyrocketed, and it beggars my imagination. If you know someone that you think might have depression, you know someone who you think might be despairing and coming close to ending it, do something. Get them to a doctor. Get them to a therapist. Get them help. Sorry, it's the poet Dylan Thomas said it best. Yeah, not from anyone I know. It's just I know so many people who have clinical depression, anxiety issues, and so on and so forth that got help and are living happy lives now. But Dylan Thomas said it best. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. What is that? Oh yeah, okay. See that? That's a rocket ship I printed in the CR10, and that's an Optimus Prime. Yeah, that is my lantern. I 3D printed a lantern for Green Lantern, sci-fi version. Mm-hmm. these lights are dead. Yeah. Dead. Dead, dead, dead. Throw that away. I had little green lights I used to be fit into holes in the side. In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. If only. But yeah, I made my own Green Lantern power battery, science fiction version. It was part of my costume as the Marine Lantern. What gets me is that we have a greater awareness of depression, a greater awareness of what's going on and how to help. And the statistics have gone up. I need kitty kisses. Aw, yeah, thank you for the kitty kisses. Good girl. Yeah, good girl. She loves her daddy. And so does Carlton. Anyway, let's try and change the subject to a happier one. Can we do that? Can we do a happier subject there, Carlton? Um, Vallejo and WizKids just released an announcement that they are partnering to make a line of WizKid paints. And they'll be coming out around the end of the year. Yes. I'm still putting you down on the floor. Down you go. So, that'll be interesting to look into, especially since I've got, right by now, a majority of Vallejo paints. I'm also planning on trying a couple new paints, new paint brands. Excuse me. Although one of these days, I'm gonna get around to trying this. It's crackle medium. From what I understand, apply a coat of model color, apply on this onto that. Once dry, it'll crack it because this will shrink on top of that, and then you can dry brush to get the edges and all that. I'm gonna have to try it out one of these days. Mm-hmm. Yes, try it, I shall. Yes, it's a baby girl. Yes, baby girl. This is my baby girl, and she is mine. And she just wants to go to sleep now, under her daddy's hand. Yes. Good girl. See, there are the thing is about painting 3D prints. Painting resin prints, just like painting a regular figure. I mean, there's literally no difference. There's not enough of a surface irregularity to prevent paint from behaving the way it normally behaves. On the other hand, FDM prints. You'll notice that this is still a rather nicely painted figure. It is an FDM print from my CR10. Yeah. Actually, Largash, that would be a drop of blood mixed in alcohol for brown paint. The lemon would end up creating an acid that would eat the rest of the paint off, and the blueberry actually would not give a good blue. You actually have to crush beetle shells to get a good blue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an FDM print, and I mean, if you look at the shield on the belly, it's actually got shading to it. The face has shading that emphasizes. Well, let's see if I can get it. Oh, come on! Don't do this, stupid. All right, try and autofocus. See what happens. Yeah, there we go. As you can see, there is shading. There, it's got a nice level of detail on an FDM print. Mm-hmm. It does require different techniques than painting on a regular miniature. For one, you know, and then you got this guy. He's got a similar. He's also got a good bit of shading on him, and well, what you've got to do is closer to wet blending or careful layering rather than a wash or dry brush. So it does, and actually ends up taking longer to paint an FDM print, at least to a tabletop or display level, than it would a resin print or a typical plastic or pewter miniature. Well, if you put a plastic miniature in a tumbler with metallic screws and stuff and tumble overnight, you will end up with a small ball of plastic with no detail. Because the rock tumbler would polish the plastic away. All right, stop that. Yeah, I need to get a new webcam when I can. Among other things, this is not my skin tone. I mean, my auto light adjust is gone. That's my desk lamp for painting miniatures with, by the way. Anyway, anyway, yeah, it's kind of early. It's 20 after, but I've already done the basics on creating the base geometry for the wings. I don't think I'll be using those for anything anytime soon. One thing I could do is if someone wants an Aarakocra figure, I could actually, you know, when I load them in, I could manually pose them to follow the arms and hands. Of course, I'd still have to make a bird head and a tail. But yeah. Anyway, So it is 9:20. I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night because I do really want to get back into working on those pauldrons and the legs. It's all I've got left to do on the orcs themselves. Then it's time for bases. The bases, four types, three surfaces for each. Round 30 millimeter, square 30 millimeter, rounded corner cavalry base for the boars, square corner cavalry base for the boars, and then flat, basic cracked earth, and detailed badlands. I figure I might be done with the sculpting and everything. Maybe not by the end of next week, but definitely by the end of the week after. On the detailed Badlands, there'll be four of each because it'll be like I took a big chunk of Badlands and took four bases out of that same chunk. Which means if you take the square ones, they actually you can trace where they meet, where like that one rock is parts of those four figures bases, things like that. Maybe ruins, you know, so you can have your orcs clambering over ruins so they can go run and get to the humies, get the pinkies. Or two for the cavalry bases. And in case you haven't seen it, and I know that most of the people currently in the chat have seen it, but I recently did a promo for the boars. This is what happens when I get bored. Oink 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 oink. Sweet. Okay. So anyway, let's go ahead. I'm gonna stick my hand up, not for high five, because that's that other 3D printing guy's thing. But I'm gonna stick my hand up and count from 5 to 1. When I get to 1, it's gonna go, and it's a bye bye. Thank you. It's something I haven't seen mounted figures. And really, the way I did my orcs, if you want to have the same orc on foot or mounted, the only difference is there might be minor detail differences in the legs between, is this. Other than that, the entire you can put the exact same torso, arms, head, pauldron, shield, whole 9 yards. Hero Forge has very generic mounted bits, especially the motorcycle. I mean, no jet cycles, nothing dynamic. Anyway, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. At a sci-fi con, Thursday is for socializing. So is Friday if it's a short con. Saturday's when the fun stuff happens. And Sunday is for kind of staggering out and checking out of your room. Bye bye.